Why do I love cars? This is such a pain in the ass. And you got to step back every once in a while and like look back and like sort of appreciate, try to reflect why you love them, but it's hard sometimes, man.
Yeah, it's expensive and it's hard to maintain them, especially if you can't do it yourself. So I think a lot of that has made a really big impact, because if you're constantly sending cars out every time you need it, especially if you have 5, 6, 7 of them, there's always going to be something broken.
Yep.
Like you're constantly doing it.
Welcome to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time listening, my name is Elvis.
Tim.
I'm Rob.
And on this podcast, we talk about car modifications because we build really cool modified cars. And yeah.
For years, Elvis been working on his bassy voice. Sound like he should be intro like a romance novel or something.
It's getting all
I'm just
creamy.
Yo, yeah, smooth jazz.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, with that said, on this episode, I think it's going to be awesome and interesting because we are talking about the love of cars or lack thereof. Why I feel like recently I've seen people go away from the love of cars and go almost the opposite way of going from loving cars to pretty much hating them. Or we've all heard of some collectors just getting rid of their whole collection and they're like, I'm done with this. Or yeah, and that can be because of a lot of things or a lot of issues. And so we're going to just talk about that and how we can keep that love of cars alive.
LS swap.
We're gonna answer that. That's probably honestly one of the best options, but we're in this non-LS Swap podcast.
That was a different podcast, and if you want to listen to that one,
look at the previous episode. But that is honestly really good advice.
That was almost a mic drop.
Yeah, we can go home. That's it. Bye.
Done.
No. We're gonna dive into all of that to come. But for now, we're just gonna know how you guys' weeks have been. What's been happening this week? What's the hot thing this week?
What's the hot thing, Tim?
Yeah, I've never said that before.
That week sucked. That week was horrible.
Come on now.
Oh no.
It wasn't good.
You delivered the 67 Corvette big block.
Yeah, that one left.
Yeah.
We had well, I don't even know what year Mustang Shelby that was that came in.
Me neither.
I don't remember. It's insignificant.
A Mustang. Was it a Mach 1?
No.
What was it?
I don't know.
Oh, just a Shelby GT 500?
350.
Yeah.
Shelby, yeah.
From the 60s.
But the guy's he's had his hands in it. It's got like some super chop cam. It's kind of
got
ridiculous.
A bunch of things that needs to be corrected, but we just don't have time to do it right at the moment because we have other commitments. So that one just went home on a trailer like 20 minutes ago. So then we have the Delahaye coming up this week. So just working straight and all that. And it's got a few little things, and then it'll go home, come back with a motor as a roller, and then we'll start pounding the body out for it.
Oh, that's going to be a really exciting project.
That one is like, to test all this car stuff, like it took me 4 months just to get a tap to be able to finish that car.
A tap?
A tap, because there's missing spindle nuts, and all the spindle nuts are like some antiquated thread pitch, so they're like an M22 by 2, and nobody makes it. So I had to order one. It got refunded. They didn't make it, and then I had to get one from China, and then China one, and then Chinese New Year, so they refunded me, and it was a month. I was trying to get one from Belgium. They canceled it, so finally the thing just showed up like 3 days ago.
So you're making your own spindle nuts from scratch, and it took you forever even just to get the hex stock to be able to even make.
There's a worldwide shortage on hex stock.
Like who would have thought that?
So I ended up having to get like a short end off of eBay from some guy. But I mean, you can make it yourself, but then that comes down to how much time. Like I could machine a piece of hex stock, but your one nut's going to be what, $1,200.
So I mean, so what this translates into, like the long-term build of this project being like multiple years, and I think that is kind of tying into cars. Sort of the whole topic of this podcast of why some people will begin to hate cars. Yeah, that's one of those reasons right there.
Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it.
It's like you're literally, you have no car without that one nut to hold your freaking wheel hub on.
That's so annoying.
So of course you can make it, you can get it CNC'd, you can get all these things, but
The cost.
how many
associated with all of
layers is that? Plus you got to find someone that's even willing to do just one.
Well, that's the other side of it.
Like
Good
nobody
luck.
will do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so those like antique, super classic, like
because it's from what, the 30s.
bespoke
The
coach
30s.
built cars from that era. I mean, like, good luck finding anybody that knows anything that can rebuild any of the things. What was it, the Bentley that we had in here? The Speed 8.
Was that a blower?
Yeah.
He had to send his shocks out to some guy, like I think his name was Nigel, and
Of course, they're all named
in England
It's like an actual
to
thing.
rebuild his shocks, and it was like 8 G's a
Nigel.
corner.
Yeah, and there's two
and like
corners.
in years.
Oh my!
It took a year. It was $8,000 a corner. This
Just
was
to build
pre-COVID.
shocks.
Yeah.
Just to rebuild these shocks. It's crazy.
That would
Even
make
this
me wanna hate
Corvette, which
cars.
is the most, like, it's the simplest thing. The thing is literally a dinosaur, and it took us a year to get a motor built for it.
Wow.
Machine shops right now are backlogged like 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
So the
Yeah.
whole 3 years of COVID, now they're trying to catch up for it, and then
Yeah.
getting parts, and their customers like, why? And you're like, I don't know, man. So if you spend a
And
ton
it
of
costs
money
a crazy
and your
amount of
car
money.
is sitting for a year, you're gonna
just
fall
done
out of
with
love
it.
it.
Yeah,
Like,
you're
it's-
done.
This particular owner owns a bunch of really crazy cars, really, really good cars. So this car is just like a pain in his side, but it's his favorite car. So it just makes it that much more frustrating. It's like, why are you messing around with this thing? Like,
Yeah.
this is not for you. You don't even own a crescent wrench, and you got this car. Like, I don't get it, but I could see why it'd be very frustrating because there's a lot of tow trucks involved.
Yeah.
Minor, fine little adjustments based on outdoor temperature. It's like,
Just
No, I
LS
don't
swap
know.
it.
These are the things, like, these are all those little things with those classic cars definitely lend themselves to why you tend to fall out of love.
What have you been up to, Rob?
What a well, let me tell you, we're deep in the Skylark again this week. It's an ongoing project, huge project. We got the whole trunk thing all dialed. That's done. We're started working on like the exhaust system. The engine that we're using is that, supercharged Wagner engine, and it's like dynoed at 1100 and whatever horsepower on pump gas. So that choice of using that engine snowballs into a lot of other things. One of them being we need to have 2-inch primary headers minimum to be able to reach those horsepower numbers. So I don't know if anybody out there knows, how significant 2-inch is compared to like a normal LS.
Yeah, so what's the
header,
normal LS
well,
header?
What, inch and 3/4, inch and 7/8.
going from inch and 7/8, I would say you probably have at least 250 options for headers. At least. Like, it's almost infinite. Any configuration you can even think of. You go to 2-inch and you have 2. And we couldn't even make them work for our car. We ended up having to buy, and we got to fabricate the headers from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah. Which we kind of knew we were going to have to do anyways. I mean, to try to find a like out of the catalog sort of off the shelf option available for our body swapped Skylark on the Roadster Shop chassis, like, good luck. It's just not going to work. Like, if you do find something, you might have to manipulate it a little bit here and there, or you might get super lucky. Who knows? We just opted to make it from scratch. So that's what I've been doing this week is like we broke out the ICE Engine Works, adult Lego kit. We started putting together our headers, sort of designing that and seeing what we got to do because it's tight, man.
That was very cool
And
to see,
like,
though. Oh,
getting into that, then we got the whole situation like it needs to have dual 3-inch exhaust, and because it is body swapped and
Body dropped.
body drop, yeah, my bad. That was a different topic at a different time.
Well, this is
It's
why
chassis
all the
swapped, body
packaging has
dropped,
gotten
yeah.
that much more difficult is because we moved it down, what, 1.5 inches or 1 and 3/4
inch and 3/4.
So we
drop
lost
on-
that much.
so you're probably gonna have to use like oval tubing, right? The one that's
They're-
like flat on the
So
bottom.
yeah, like putting together our whole plan of attack for the exhaust and all of that around the transmission area in the footwell of the car. That's where it gets really, really tight. And so we've opted to go with like a bent oval tubing in that area to sort of maximize our potential for our footwell clearance. Heat management is going to be a really big thing in this car. Like, we're taking this stuff very seriously, and that's long story short. That's what I've been doing this week, getting all of that said and done. so that Tim can get back on the computer and
chase more parts
like usual.
Then I can throw up the next roadblock.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's what we'll be doing this week.
Sweet. So with that said, let us dive into the topic of discussion.
dive
Why
right in.
do people start hating cars? Like, why does the love for cars die? Why do car enthusiasts suddenly just stop loving cars? Because again, mentioning or reiterating my previous point at the beginning of the video, I've seen it just happen a few times, and it started to make me ask the question of why does that happen, both with modern cars and even older cars too. I feel like I've seen it more with people that own older cars.
Yeah.
So why does
I would say
that
that's
happen?
more common with the older cars, just simply because of how much more difficult it is to keep them actually roadworthy, or not roadworthy, but like able to be driven whenever you want. It's really hard to keep. If you have a fleet of cars, you just imagine, how do you keep all your batteries maintained all the time? I mean, you think about that for a second. Like, imagine what Jay Leno, his situation
God.
must be like.
C-Tech's #1 customer.
You know, it's one of those kind of things that if you have multiple cars, like, you know,
and it's not a hard thing to mess up. Like, we have battery tenders on everything, but then it's like, I got to move a bunch of cars around to get one out, and then I forget to put one on a car, and then 3 days later the battery's dead, and it's like, ugh.
yeah, that, and like, you know, fuel nowadays isn't the same quality as used to be, so fuel's going bad sooner, and you're like, man, what a pain in the ass. Like, it makes you start to, you know, really start thinking about your choices. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I love cars? This is such a pain in the ass. And you got to step back every once in a while and like look back and like sort of appreciate, try to reflect why you love them, but it's hard sometimes, man.
Yeah, it's expensive,
Maintaining
and it's hard
them
to
is hard.
maintain them, especially if you can't do it yourself. So I think a lot of that has made a really big impact, because if you're constantly sending cars out every time you need it, especially if you have 5, 6, 7 of them, there's always going to be something broken.
Yep.
Like, you're constantly doing it. And if you're not driving in them, you're not using them, then it's even more frustrating.
Yeah.
Because at least if it's in the moment, you're like, oh, I got to sort that out. Or you get some kind of heads up, but then there'll be times you just go hit the key and nothing happens. And you're like, oh,
You're like,
what happened
I
now?
just used this thing.
What
I parked
now?
It worked perfect, and now it doesn't.
Yeah. So you have to drive them, but how can you drive 6, 7 cars at a time? Like, you can't do it.
You know?
Yeah.
And it all depends where you are. Like, I mean, ideally, if you live Chilliwack or out in the country, you might get to, but in the city, you can't do it. I was driving a customer's G-Wagon pickup around, and it's like, the thing's so weak that...
Why you weak? Why? I just remembered Uncle Roger just talking. Why
you
so
so
weak?
But it's like, just the tiniest bit of hesitation off the light, I had people honking at me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's just like, everywhere you go is...
You get like PTSD from driving the Defender?
I think it's actually better in the Defender. a little
Actually?
bit, yeah.
Yeah, because the
No
Defender
way it's
seemed
better
ridiculous.
in the Defender. No way it's better in the Defender. That
you
thing
guys-
is slow.
You guys went out for a little duo
No,
driving
it's not
that.
as
It
slow
was
as
ridiculous,
the Defender.
wasn't
It's
it?
way better than the Defender.
Oh yeah.
Way
Oh, yeah.
better.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got a whole bunch of people staring at you, and then if you don't like pull a 400 light, they're like beep 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 beep.
Yeah.
Take
You're
it
like,
easy, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's your hurry, man?
Yeah.
You get no consideration, zero. So then it's like you're in this big hectic. You know, people are either trying to see you, get the hell out of the way, get in your way, and it's just like it's hectic to drive that stuff out there.
Yes, and that is very true. And also, there's always something, like you mentioned. There's always something. It's funny because my wife, anytime I'm like, oh, I'm going out to get something or buy, and then I come back and I'm like, she just sees my face and I'm like, yep, there's always something wrong with one of the cars. And so when you get into a car that actually functions like a normal car, you get in, we press the start button, it starts up, there's no like warning lights, there's like everything is good, there's just something
That's so satisfying.
That's your age.
You're maturing.
You're like, this is so nice. I don't have to fiddle with anything. The indicator is not working properly. I don't have to fiddle with that, or like a wiring issue, or maybe like trying to warm it up for like 20 minutes just so I can drive it.
Yeah, but it still has a downside too.
True.
Every time I'm at my house, I try to get into the nice car because I want that experience. It never has gas in it.
Oh, yeah.
It never has gas.
But I feel like that's an easy thing to remedy.
It's expensive for me to drive it. True. I'm not going to go to a gas station and put $5 in.
Yeah.
So I think it's just her way of getting free gas. Shady business.
Yeah. What about like the maintenance costs of these things?
Well, a lot of it's like, say, for instance, these Corvettes, the parts aren't super expensive, but it's just hard to get them. And then if you're not able to do it yourself, it's hard to get in someplace to get it done. Mm-hmm. Even for us, like we're booked forever. Like it just never seems to end. And everybody wants to go to the front of the line and you know, cheat little things. They try to do little things for people just to keep it happy, but you'll just end up doing that all day, every day. Because it's all these little things. It's like, oh, it's just a quick little thing. There's another day. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it'll eat you alive.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating for a lot of these people. And like I say, like especially now, I can see how it's gotten even more frustrating because everything's months away.
Yep.
So you got a car down for months at a time.
I certainly wouldn't want anything like if you had something like that where it was a little bit of like a problem child kind of car, and you know getting into it, you're like, oh, I accept the fact that it's going to be a thing I'm going to have to tinker with. Like, you know, we talked about this in one of the podcasts about old school hot rodding. Like some people just really like that kind of thing, but like coming back to like parts availability, if you like tinkering, that's cool. Well, you know, we all like tinkering. That's why we got into things. Yep. But like when you're waiting months and months and months for something that's very insignificant of a part to fix or remedy a situation,
so annoying.
But
that you just like you're thinking, why do I even bother with this car?
But it's got even worse than that because now a lot of this stuff is just not made. So you can't even get it. So now you have to find a place to get it, and whoever has it holds it for ransom. So now you're paying like an obscene amount of money for something that like at one point was probably like a $20 part.
Yes.
Yeah. And now it's gotten out of hand.
Very true.
So like getting held ransom all the time, like sometimes we've been lucky enough to benefit from those inflated prices, but we've been, you know, at the mercy of it just as many times. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And sometimes you get lucky enough, like you were talking before about cross-referencing parts from, you know, a different manufacturer for something that you're working on, you know, and not having to pay the inflated price. Like that's
old Ferraris, yes.
Ferrari just happened to be the one.
Yep.
Sometimes you're lucky enough to do that, but you have to do a lot of legwork just to find that out.
Yeah, you're still spending time and effort.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I was to charge out for all the time it took me to find out and cross-reference all these parts and pass it on to the customer, there probably wouldn't have been that much of a savings.
Not much savings, but it wouldn't have been 3 or more months waiting for the product.
It's like you call and it's like, it's going to be 3 months. You're like, oh no. So then you just start digging and then you got to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, for whatever reason, my hot Ferrari source is in like Massachusetts. Like it's not Italy. It's not, you know what I mean? It's
like it's not like Miami.
Yeah. Like it's, so it's a weird thing.
Yeah. Because even with like, this also goes back again to the whole body swap thing that we talked about last week. But that's one of the reasons, again, that I think also body swaps would be cool at the same time. But also, I mean, it is a lot of work because I have since then done more research.
See,
and I'm like, oh my gosh, it is a lot of work. And it almost is, I don't know, there's a part of it that is almost discouraging because I'm like, crap, when am I going to get through all of this stuff? I'm like, I have a whole life. I have a family. I'm like, when am I going to find time to do any of this stuff? And so sometimes it is a little bit discouraging. And so for you guys, have you guys ever like gotten fed up with cars?
Oh yeah.
And just be like, okay, I'm done with this. I just need to take a break.
Oh yeah. I think we can all honestly say that we've all gone through phases where you're just like, I'm freaking over it. Like I'm done. And like it sometimes that happens and it like puts you into a slump for a little bit. And then every once in a while somebody will come into your life or whatever and they'll just be like just over the moon excited about something that you just look at every day and you're just like, psh, whatever, you know, and they're like just blown away and you're just like, wait a second. I see through your eyes and your love affair with this whole thing fuels my passion again. And that's a thing, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you got to step away from it and take a bit of a break from it, but it's...
I think for us, it can be really difficult having the business side of it really, really saps a lot of the love affair of cars out of it.
True.
Yeah, because by 5 o'clock, you've had enough cars for this.
Yeah. like if it wasn't for the fact that we both love cars, we probably wouldn't be doing this.
Like, I get in trouble all the time because
You're watching car shows?
Yeah, I'm watching car shows. It's like, you do this all day and you come home and all you do is watch car shows.
Yeah. Kim just asked me the other day. She's like, don't you ever get tired of watching car stuff? I'm like, no. I just go from one to the next.
So
and
I'd say we're probably in the group that has that sickness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think
same.
from the outside looking in, it like, our life probably looks super awesome. So then there's people that want to dabble in it, and those are the guys that are like, okay, that's not for me, and they're out right away. Like, we have multiple friends like, oh man, I want to get a cool car. They get a cool car, and like 3 weeks later, like,
I'm done with this. Bye.
You know what I almost wonder? I almost wonder, because of the fact that we're like a custom shop and it's always been like that, is the reason why we've sort of been able to sustain sort of our love for vehicles more so than if we were, say, a restoration shop. You know what I mean? Like,
I see what you mean.
The difference between the two is, like, if we ever run into an issue and we're building something and we're like, oh man, that's not available,
Make something
I'm just
work.
gonna make it.
Yep.
You know, and then and it doesn't slow you down. I mean, obviously time spent, but if it's not available, you make it. But if you're restoring cars, that's not an option. You know, nowadays it's a little bit different, right? Like, you could 3D scan and print and do whatever you want. You know, metal print some really obscure one-off prototype piece from a car. You can do that now. You can. It's going to cost a lot of jing, but it's an option.
It is doable.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not for everybody either, right? Like, what normal person can justify the expense of that?
plus you got to find somebody that's even willing to do it.
Well, that's the other side of it.
Because you're like, you can reach out to all these companies and they're like, no, we don't do that.
No.
Be like, no, I just watched you do it. And they're like, no, but we don't do it to cars.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And
then they're
weird.
like, give it to me in this file format. You're like, what is that? And then off you go. And then you find out there's all these layers. Like our previous podcast with all the technology side of it, there's a whole bunch of layers in that. So it's not just like, hey, 3D print me this. It's like, oh, now we got to first get this repaired to a state that we can even 3D scan it. Then we got to, send it off with whatever little mods that we need to do to make it work, and then get it printed. And then it's got to come back. You got to do post machining. Like, there's all these layers. It's not an easy thing. And that's, again, what was probably a $200 part is now $10,000 just for you to be able to drive your car. Yeah. And some people get off on the process because they're like, I'm saving this thing.
Yeah.
And other people are just like, what? Why can't you do this? Why can't you just set it to this? And you're like, you can't, man. And then it's a frustrating, and then you spend so much time trying to educate your customer or educate the person that has it. And then you have to justify all the things that you're doing because it's like, why is this $500?
Yeah. Well,
okay,
let me tell you.
I had to spend this many hours even trying to find the thing, and then we had to get it shipped here. And then now that it's here, it took me 3 hours to put it in. And I saw it online for $80. You're like, oh my God. Only because I showed you where to find it. But you could spend hours on forums trying to find that stuff. And then, like I say, some people are just like, oh, cool, you need it? Sweet. Now it's $800.
Yeah.
See, in that situation, it's not cars suck, it's peopling sucks.
Yeah, people suck.
Yeah.
So if you ask them the first time and it's $600, just pay the $600.
Yeah, because next time you come back.
Because if you go looking around and then you have to come back, you're going to get it.
Yeah. And so how can people get that love back?
Get the passion.
Yes. But
I would say probably just putting realistic expectations on what it is.
Yeah, that's solid.
Like, just know that it's, it's good. There's going to be problems. It should be a side thing. Don't expect to drive it to work 4 days a week. None of that kind of stuff. And it's like, you have to be prepared for it to be down for 3 months. And you can't get manic about it. Like, it's just part of what it is. And you're going to stress yourself out and chase all this stuff around and get angry and get frustrated. And then you're going to hate it. Because we have some customers that's just like, oh, okay, no problem. It is what it is. Yeah. And then the other guy's like, what do you mean? Did you check here? Did you call here? What about this? And then they send you 47 links and you're just like, man, if I hadn't exhausted all those options before we got to this point, you shouldn't even have your car here with me. Like, don't send me obvious stuff. I've been through all of it. So it's like, it's frustrating. But if you have either you need 2 or 3 cars so that one is always working.
Yeah.
Or just no cars.
Yeah.
That's it. So some people just shouldn't have cars. Like, just go get yourself something nice and new. Maybe go buy a Challenger. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, manage your expectations to what you're hoping to have your relationship with your automobile for. I think if you don't ask too much out of it, or you don't expect too much out of it, you're not going to get disappointed.
Wow, this sounds like relationship advice.
It is.
That's how
Sounds like relationship
I'm in love with the
advice. car. Don't ask too much of it.
Yeah, don't ask.
Whoa. That's a different
Wow,
podcast.
I know, right?
Maybe for the next subject. I don't
Oh
know.
my gosh.
But no, like if you say you have something that's like, like some super cammed hot rod car, if you expect to be able to get into that car and go sit and stop and go traffic on a hot summer day, you're going to be disappointed, man, because it's going to be hell in many different ways. Like, it's going to be horrible.
They were never designed to do that.
Yeah.
Ever. They didn't have those kind of traffic issues at that time.
Yeah, there were fewer cars.
Roads were like, you didn't have the same congestion. You didn't have any of those problems. These are modern problems. And then you get these guys that are so like married to what it is. And it's like, you can easily rectify this by putting aluminum radiator and electric fans in it. They're like, nope, I got to keep it original.
It's got to be factory correct.
Factory correct. You're like, okay, well then go drive it in that era. Go out in the country and drive it. You'll never have a problem. But if you want to drive it to downtown Vancouver and go to Cafe Artigiano and show everybody your Corvette, it's probably going to be overheating.
Yeah, and I think that even a modern
quit
car.
picking on Corvettes, but it's pretty much any old
There's
car.
like 2 right behind us. There's 2 right behind there.
It's just a representation of all classics
Yeah,
for the
it's-
most part. I mean, even modern cars though, like if you expect too much out of any modern car, if you're using it for it's a purpose that it wasn't intended for, then you're going to be disappointed. Like, don't expect like a Ferrari Enzo to handle like a Cadillac Eldorado, and be comfortable. Those are just kind of crappy examples. But you understand what I'm
That
getting
might
at.
have been like one of the worst.
I know, it's so bad.
Yeah, whatever.
I was like, wait, I'm trying to like picture it. I'm like,
Yeah, right. I mean, but like, or even a modern car. Like, if you upgrade the performance package or potential of the engines, and you start getting like into these crazy horsepower numbers, they're not going to drive the same as they were when they first got it from the factory.
and you'll probably blow
won't-
something up.
Well, maybe or maybe not. Like, some of them are pretty amazing. Like, you can get some stupid numbers out of cars nowadays, but you're not going to go into like, we keep coming back to stop and go traffic is like a real thing. Especially like we live in a bigger city. There's a lot of traffic and it gets freaking hot here.
But
And
it's
you
not
just-
even just on
not gonna
old
do it.
cars, even new cars. Like,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
we have these Lamborghinis in the shop that we can't get parts for. So it's like, I want to drive my Lambo. Like, yeah, well, I want you to be able to drive your Lambo because I want to get paid, but you just can't get stuff. And then you're at the mercy. Like, I think another side of it is like, so many of these little specialty shops just straight up rob people.
Yep.
Oh, you
I've
see that
seen
so
that
often.
so
Like,
much.
rob them.
You're like, wow, your moral compass is so out of whack. It's so common.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think that's another big, and then we try to treat our customers fairly as possible, and what happens is like, we're so swamped that I literally feel like my head's in a vice every day because everybody wants us to
Yeah.
solve their problems, and it's a lot. So
Yeah.
and then it's almost like I could see how maybe potentially some of these other specialist guys that like just stick to one brand is like they just keep raising their prices to sort of clear out the riffraff.
Yeah.
If you're willing to pay, then I'll deal with you. Otherwise, it's like you got hundreds of these guys just like, oh, and we've done it with every single thing in the shop. It's like, and I'm sure you can attest to it. It's like, no matter which vehicle we done, whoever we sort out, we could just only specialize in that.
Yeah.
We could specialize in Porsches. We could specialize in 190s because there's enough people. And as soon as word gets out, it's like
To just keep coming.
SeaWorld down
Just
there.
get
It's like
flooded.
G-Wagons. It's like, oh shit, you got somebody that does G-Wagons? And it's like 10 G-Wagon guys now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
our Saturdays are insane around here. Like, we should put up a gate
I know.
on a roll-up door and
Do,
just
like,
have
little
like,
walkthrough tours.
and it's like it's like going to SeaWorld.
Yeah, you just see
look
them from a
you just see, like,
distance and
people
that's
hanging
it.
out there just watching.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, okay, come on in.
I think one really cool thing, you mentioned it earlier, is that we charge prices, like what we charge is we don't charge based on the car brand that you're in.
Oh, yeah.
Or
That's
like
right.
Ferrari, because again, I've seen this happen multiple times of shops or people just charging exorbitant amounts of money if they think the owner can afford it.
It's insane.
So-
like, oh, it's this kind of car, you should charge more. It's like, no, man.
Yeah, and I think
That's
that also
not right.
turns people off from cars too, because when you go fix a car or something and they tell you every time that it's going to be this amount of money and you hear the price and you just flip out, and it's like, no, they charge you based on the car that you're in. I feel like that is a huge discouraging thing too.
I think so too.
So yeah.
It's a weird industry to be in, because it's like, it's all of that, those, you put all those things together, it's like, it just is so overwhelming. Like, even for us, like, I got cars that I would love to drive, but I'm waiting on parts, I'm waiting on things. So like, for a normal person, it would be like, you got to really, really love it. So it's not really a thing that you can just dabble in. Like, it just doesn't work at all. If you're gonna dabble, then get a lip kit for your Audi and just be happy.
Be on your way.
Just be happy ever after. That's it.
Yeah. So
I think that, like, with cars and stuff like that, if you want to be an enthusiast and you have, you know, a couple of cars or whatever, I think you got to have pretty thick skin a little bit. Because if you're going to go out in your car that you only use occasionally, and you just have to know that there might be a time when you have to pull over to the side of the road for whatever reason. And people are going to be looking at you because, you know, there's a lot of haters out there in the world too, right? And they're going to be like, you know, thumbs up on you and, you know, that's what you get, you fuck, blah, blah, blah. And they're hating on you because you got a nice car, you're parked on the side of the road with your hood up or whatever.
like when you broke down in the Ferrari.
Yeah. Like, I could break down and be almost abandoned. Like, I'd be out there by myself with a million people driving by. I break down in Testarossa. Everybody in the shop got a phone call. Did I just see your boss broke down on a Ferrari? It's like, yeah, you did.
Yeah. I mean, it happens from time to time, right? But so
But
you
for
have to
some
have,
people,
I think
that's
you have
like
to have thick skin.
that's the worst possible scenario, is like being broken down. And then you get the phone calls like, why? Well, your car is 65 years old. That might be part of it. And then the next part is like, if you get one of these cars, you can proactively resolve a whole bunch of problems, but a lot of people don't. They wait till they become problems.
Yeah.
But a lot of these cars have history that where like you could go and on a forum and be like, these are all things that are known problems. These are ways to rectify it. But they don't. They just do them one at a time and then act like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a common thing. You can easily do that nowadays. It's such a simple thing to do.
Essentially.
Like, you could do that before you even buy a car.
Yeah.
Like I do. Like, just go on common issues that you can have with this make model, whatever it is. You can find out, am I willing to accept all of those issues? Can I deal with those?
That sounds like
If
a
I
marriage
can,
now.
Now we're
Which comes down to like, the next topic is like, how do you buy these cars? It's like, well, you find out all the common issues.
Yeah.
And then you go by, okay, here's this car's this much money. How many of these common issues have been rectified already?
Yeah.
Which is going to dictate the price. So you see one for $8,000 and you're like, oh man, that's a good deal. It's probably not a good deal. Buy the one for
Not-
15
not when
grand.
the
That's
average
everything's
is
been
15.
fixed.
That's good. That's very good
You
to
know?
mention. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's just it. If you know all of that, then it's easier to manage your expectations of what
So there's
you
a
want
lot
out
of
this
ways
vehicle.
that you can make it less painful.
So you can fall back in love with the car again.
But you gotta, education. You gotta educate yourself, and then manage your expectations, like he says, and then it's fun again. But if you don't, and you think you're just gonna jump in one of these and head out,
And one point that I just also remembered, we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but whenever sometimes people buy these cars, like they buy it thinking, oh, I'm just gonna take the whole thing apart, and like, no, like I feel like that's like a no that you should not do. Don't just buy the car and take it completely apart with dreams of making it amazing. I think so far what I've learned just from interacting with you guys and working at the shop for a while is start little by little, because if you don't, like me, for example, one of my Jags, I've taken it completely apart, and now I'm like, I've almost, not that I've lost love for it, but at the same time, it's like every time I see it, it's almost like an eyesore. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? And I'm almost regretting. So start with things that you can do. Similar thing with the Lambo too, that like we're keeping the Tahoe drivable for as long as we can. Our Lambo Tahoe project, we're keeping it driving for as long as we can before we strip the body off and then put the Lamborghini shell on top of it.
And even just the logistics side of it, being able to move it from shop to shop and get it out of the way when we need
So
to.
much easier.
It's easy. It's like, okay, this is our goal for today. We're going to take it this far because at that point we can't drive it anymore. Then we just go put it in the lot and we bring it back when we're ready for it. Whereas if we just blew it all apart, it'd be dead and eaten away and taking up all of our space. And it's like, so we've learned from doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
we've learned a lot of hard lessons in the lifetime that we've been doing this now.
and it's all the little moves that take the longest.
Ooh, that's deep right there.
Embrace the little moves.
The little moves will
Embrace
kill you,
the little
man.
moves.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we just got to move this a half inch, and it's the whole day.
And it looks like you haven't done anything.
Yeah, it looked like you didn't do anything. And you're like, look what we did. And they're like,
Oh.
what? Do I have to pay
What
for
did you
that?
do?
Because that doesn't look any different than what it did when I came earlier.
Yeah, I don't know. Use your cars for what they're intended for. Don't expect too much. And
Yeah, 'cause you don't expect your grandma to run a marathon. She's 65 years old.
yeah, that's a good analogy. That's a really good analogy. Some grandmas might be able to
grandmas
do
can
it.
do that.
There's a few.
There's a
I'm
few.
just saying, for the most part.
For the most part.
Oh, that was perfect, actually. Perfect note to end on. So thank you guys so much for watching this video or listening to this podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Modify with TrickFactory Customs, and we will see you next week.
And rate us 5 stars.
Yes.
If you're just listening.
Exactly.
Even if we are not.
Oh. Yeah. Saw it here.